verse in dark times. I am so pleased to see so many of you coming back and some new faces who weren't here last week. We have a wonderful lineup today, as I think you all know, and we are going to be going pretty much in alphabetical order, barring technical issues. Before we start, I just want to announce our lineup for next week and also make sure that you all remember next week is 1 hour earlier. So it will be starting next Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. What better Mother's Day present could you give your mother than a laugh or two? So next week's lineup will be, let's see, A.E. Stallings, Jan Schreiber, Aurel Protopopescu, Amit Majmudar, Barbara Lydecker-Crane, and me. And looking forward to that. Today, we have quite a wonderful lineup, and we are going to begin with Kevin Durkin. I'm going to introduce each of you and then have you start. Kevin Durkin's poems have appeared in such journals as Poetry, the Yale Review, the New Criterion, and Light, and in the anthologies Measure for Measure, Irresistible Sonnets, Able Muse Anthology, Fire and Rain, and Poetry Daily. His poetry chapbook, Los Angeles in Fog, is an unreliable guide to Southern California weather. Currently a managing editor at the Huntington Library Art Museum and Botanical Gardens in San Marino, he resides with his wife and 2 daughters in Santa Monica. He is also the managing editor of Light. Kevin, please take it away. Kevin, you have to unmute yourself.
Now you can hear me. Good. Glad to see everybody here. It's great to see you all. Thank you, Melissa, for setting up this series. And it's a pleasure to be reading in it. I'm sure that all of you have heard the same stories about what happened to some famous people in the past that lived through this kind of a historical moment. Shakespeare supposedly wrote King Lear during lockdown, or the equivalent for him. Newton invented the calculus and maybe developed his theory of gravity. So what have any of you accomplished lately, right? And personally, the only thing I've managed was a new Clarihue about John Mella, the man who founded Light magazine, Light Quarterly, back in 1992. And he passed away a while ago. So this is sort of in his memory. John Mella was an interesting fella. He founded a journal so light, it beams through the darkness of his long night. Now, John was an interesting fellow, if any of you got to meet him. I never got to meet him in person, but I talked to him on the phone once because he called me up to correct one of my, to work on a proof page for the first poem I got published with him. In this copy, which was the autumn 1998 copy of Light magazine. This is the way it looked back then. It was a print publication, hard to believe. And at that time, it was around the time that Bill Gates was talking about buying Apple, because Apple was in big trouble. It's hard to believe that now. So at the time I was writing a bunch of double dactyls and sharing them with Melissa and another college friend of ours by email. And I sent about 6 of these trifles then to John. And he took 2 of them. And the first one he published was Another Fall. Higgledy-piggledy, William the Conqueror bit into apple and tasted pure gold. Now all the world will be looking through windows he counterproductively way oversold. I love the silent clapping. I'm sure it makes noise when you hear it. Oh yeah, louder, louder, louder. And then he took this other double dactyl. I actually started writing these because I was reading Jiggery Pokery, the compendium of double dactyls that John Hollander and Anthony Hecht edited back in the, I think, 1969 or so. And that's what got me going. So then I decided to invent the muse for the double dactyl and named her Donna Dactylia, and then wrote this poem called Amusing. Higgledy-piggledy, Donna Dactylia whispers ambrosial words to her lovers, even though one may call Hollander Hecht et al. Bibliophilical, she warms their covers. Now, I'm only going to read poems that John accepted. That's the way this works. And one of the ones, there were quite a few he didn't accept. And he would send these rejection notices said not in big letters and then light in little letters. But these all were light because he took them. And this is the longest contribution of mine that he published. It's actually two poems, one called On Poet Critic and the other called After Circulating on Poet Critic. And he said, I'll publish these, but only if you put them under an umbrella title. And he suggested peer review, which is what we ended up using. Peer review. On Poet Critic. I wish I liked his poetry as much as I like him. He speaks with suavity and verve. His verse is rough and dim. His inoffensive book reviews have won him friends with clout. He might win prizes, but his lines won't last the decade out. Now, I really did send that around to friends, and then I got this back. And I got some interesting responses and then wrote, After Circulating on Poet Critic. Why is it all my friends assume that they should now feel dissed? It seems that though I aimed at one, not one of them was missed. And what about the fellow whom I skewered with my gaff? His hide is so insensitive, my point just made him laugh. And finally, the last poem of mine that he published was called Magnetism. And I want to show you the cover because, as you can see, there was I think light came into some money, and there was they were able to publish this in a nicer version. This poem is based on some obscure thing I read in a book about how Lapland hunters, like in the early 20th century and maybe even earlier, were able to spot where reindeer were when they were hunting them by looking at the aurora borealis and noticing ripples in it. That was because of something that the reindeer were doing. Magnetism. The reindeer paw the Lapland snow in search of buried moss. And when they strike the rocks below, magnetic ripples cross the curtains of the northern lights, as Lapland hunters know, scanning the sky on brilliant nights, going where reindeer go. Thank you very much.
You know what I'm going to experiment with? I forgot to do it with Kevin's reading, but I can unmute you all after each reading. So I'm going to unmute you. Let's give Kevin a real round of applause, and then I'll mute you again. So applause for Kevin. Okay, now I'm muting you again. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, so our next wonderful reader is Anna M. Evans. Anna gained her MFA from Bennington College and has received fellowships from the MacDowell Artists Colony and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. She currently teaches at West Windsor Arts Center and Rowan College in Burlington County. Her new collection, Under Dark Waters, Surviving the Titanic, is out now from Able Muse Press, and you can find that at ablemusepress.com. And her sonnet collection, Sisters and Courtesans, is available from White Violet Press. Her website is www.annamevans.com. And Anna, please take it away.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yes, excellent. I'm going to start with a couple of political poems, which hopefully are quite light, and then we're going to get lighter. Okay. So the first poem is Trump's take on the Mueller report, and it's a tritina. I didn't say the things it says I said. We didn't do the things it says we did. And if it says we did, I say it's lying, because it also says it caught me lying when there's no record of the things I said and no one witnessed anything we did. I had my reasons for the things I did, Everyone twists my words and says I'm lying. You can't believe a single word that's said. I didn't say I said I never lied. And I'm going to try and make this as close as possible to a real poetry reading by plugging my upcoming book, The Quarantina Chronicles, which is a selection of tritinas written about the pandemic. Okay, moving on. Sometimes I write political poems that are also parodies. I like parody. And this is a parody of a very famous poem by W.H. Auden, and it's called Museum of the Impeachment. About the Republic, they were never wrong, the founding fathers. How well they understood its vulnerability, how it could be taken down while the people are ordering off Amazon or streaming Netflix dully along. How, when the activists are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous vote, there always must be young people who did not specially want it to happen, eating avocado toast in a trendy new brunch place. They never forgot that probably the dreadful presidency must run its course anyhow on Fox News, the unlikely spot, where the talk show hosts deny all facts, which is torture, and then cut to a story about a horse. In this impeachment, for instance, how everyone turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The Republicans may have read the transcript, considered forsaken Ukraine, but for them, it was not an important failure. The sun shone, as it had to, on the House articles disappearing into the biased Senate, and the expensive, delicate congressman that must have seen something amazing, a president abusing his powers, had an election to get to and sailed calmly on. Okay, this one was actually published last month by Light, and the only downside here is that, in fact, April was also cancelled. We regret to inform you that March is cancelled. We've cancelled March. There'll be no sport. Broadway's dark. Most classes taught will be online. At Disneyland, the gates are locked. Large groups are banned from gatherings of any sort. The shops are bare because you've bought your toilet paper act. You're fraught, keeping your distances as planned. We've cancelled March. Each cough is evidence you've caught the virus. Each fresh news report alarms you. Still, we've made our stand. This plague can't get the upper hand. So we've invoked the last resort and cancelled March. Right, I'm going to read one of my poems from Sisters and Courtesans, some of which are quite funny. And the one I've picked today is My Life as a Serving Wench of the Round Table. Everyone seems to think those nights were sainted. I have to say I didn't see much sign, and I was, how to put it, well acquainted with quite a few of them. I served their wine. After a jug or two, they would get loud and try to feel me up. Gawain was cute. I let him have me right before he vowed off women. Gareth acted like a brute and tried to force me once, but I got clear. Percival was kinky, so was Kay. Lancelot would call me Guinevere. I did love Galahad, but he was gay. King Arthur, though a nobleman and kind, was to all their faults completely blind. Right, I'm going to finish with, in true poetry reading style, I told you I was going to make this as true to life as possible, the poem I wrote this morning when I was walking my dog and thinking about how badly this might go. Cats and Zoom don't mix. We had to go all virtual just like that, and most of it is going pretty well, except Zoom meetings hijacked by my cat. The teaching's looking good from where I'm sat. It's lucky that I had my Blackboard shell when we had to go all virtual just like that. The student who was bratty, still a brat. Not much is new, as far as I can tell. They all like online classroom with my cat. I can forgive myself for getting fat. I've drunk an awful lot of Zinfandel since we had to go all virtual just like that. The problem is, when I sit down to chat online with more important clientele, the Zoom meetings are hijacked by my cat. And if I peel her off me, yelling, "Scat!" she just comes back again and raises hell. I've mastered going virtual just like that, except Zoom meetings hijacked by my cat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. That was great. All right, we are on to reader number 3, David Galef. David publishes, in his words, not mine, too much verse for his own good, in places ranging from the Yale Review and Witness to Measure and, of course, Light. His 2 poetry books are Flaws and Kanji Poems. His 2 poem chapbooks are Lists and Apocalypses. He also recently won an honorable mention in this year's Wurgle Flomp Poetry Award. But who can make a living from this, he says. His day job is professor of English and creative writing program director at Montclair State University. And David, please take it away.
There. Okay, can people hear me? Yes, okay. I'm just gonna read a bunch of poems. Most of them are unpublished because I thought that would be more fun. The first one stems from a quarrel from myself. It's called Art and Not Art. Art neither allows nor prohibits. Art is not the opposite of life, except at certain exhibits. Some art, plays too many games. Art is not the enemy of freedom, despite its frames. Art is beyond, or below, or above. Art is not blind, you've confused it with love. Art at times appears to be blushing. Art is not art when it alters nothing. Art is a wound, a crooked cut, a contusion. Art is not the artist, a pardonable confusion. Art has led many artists to drink. Art isn't quite what you think it is, no matter what you think. And I'll leave it at that. Let me move on here. I'm reading off a screen, so the next one is somewhat political, and it's based on an old joke that I hope survives the transition from joke to lines. It's called Trump, schooled, as in taught a lesson. So, Trump drops in on a local school, trying to prove that he's no fool. Most of the teachers scurry away, but one of them stops by just to say, "Happy to see you, Mr. Trump. Maybe you'll get us out of a slump. Today, we're discussing tragedy. Can you lead the class instead of me?" Trump figures, sure, he's a real whiz, and asks, "Who can say what tragedy is?" One girl in back raises a hand. "We live on a farm with a lot of land. If a tractor crushes my brother flat, is that an example? How about that?" Trump shakes his head. "Not what I meant. Something like that is an accident." Next up, a little boy volunteers. "What if a big truck suddenly veers, hits a school bus, and kills 33? Wouldn't that be a tragedy?" Trump frowns again. "Sorry, chum, that's just a big loss, at least for some." After a while, the silence grows long. Trump grows impatient. "This is so wrong. Can nobody give me a definition?" One girl in back, as if on a mission, says, "What if a heat-seeking missile smashes into the Oval Office and completely trashes the office and you, Mr. President?" Trump smacks his thigh. "Now that's what I meant. Next question for you. Can you tell me why?" The girl puts on an expression that's wry. "Well, no big loss the way it went, and it sure wouldn't be an accident." All right, I'll move on now. This one actually did get published in Inside Higher Ed, and at some point I'll have to scroll down the page. It's called Portrait of This Year's Student Body. Several genders, 2 tattoos, abstraction and political views, mostly 18 to 25s, though some as old as rare archives. Polymorphous, many-eyed, haircut short and sometimes dyed. Highly conscious of their weight, often looking for a date. Semi-addicted to caffeine, completely glued to any screen. Posture crooked, prone to slouch, love to lie on any couch. Susceptible to colds, depression, and emotional regression. Overworked and underpaid, in internships with little aid. Idealistic in beliefs, though they've got their share of griefs. Pulse rate steady, though apt to spike during a tuition hike. Emotional, but also brainy, inclined toward concepts, cool and zany. Performance art plus economics, or Shakespeare's plays and serial comics. Young at heart, how could they not be? Low self-esteem, but can be snotty. may get giddy in a bunch, but snore in class if after lunch. Extremely easy to offend, but just as simple to befriend. Impatient for the times to change, eager to increase their range, poised to take the world by storm as soon as they fill out the graduate form. But unsure if they really merit this awkward era they'll inherit. All right, move on to another one here. Again, I'm gonna have to scroll down here. This one is based on a little news item, which I'll read. The news item is from the University of Washington News. This is, as they say, a true fact. A University of Washington study has published the largest set of recordings from bowhead whales to discover that these marine mammals have a surprisingly diverse, constantly shifting vocal repertoire. Quote, "If humpback whale song is like classical music, bowheads are jazz," said lead author Kate Stafford, an oceanographer at the UW's Applied Physics Laboratory. And I thought, hell, that's too good to pass up. So, the humpback repertory includes pilot fugues and bass preludes, baleen symphony number 3 in a level measured key of C, that's S-E-A. The bowhead beat is bent toward jazz, like Minkus, Charles, and Charles, Ray, blow-holing that razzmatazz in a daring, dazzling ocean spray. The humpback songs are classical, no elements fantastical, no wailing on the saxophone, the Luga Brahms in sonar tone. When bowheads jam, they sway and swish with a blast that in its foresoul sound just like a trombone fish, the immortal Tommy Dorsal. Although some fish might think it odd, it could be rather grand if bowheads and humpbacks merge their pod in a cetacean fusion band. All right, and one last long one and then 2 extremely short ones. I've always been taken by that William Hughes Mearns poem, the excerpt from which is quite famous. The poem is Antigonish, whose pronunciation I had to look up last night. It's the one that begins, "Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away." I've always been taken by that, to the point where I thought, well, why stop there? Why not build some more quatrains? So here they are. "Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. He said he wasn't there because he chose to scoff at physical laws. Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. But wasn't he the one surprised when the banister dematerialized? Last night I saw upon the stair a man quite clearly not all there. His brain, it seemed, had gone to pot, his conversation sheerest rot." 2 more. "Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there, at least not ontologically in any known philosophy. Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there, nor at the Strand, nor on the square. And now he isn't everywhere." And then 2 extremely short ones. I don't know what to do with this first one. I haven't sent it out anywhere, but simply, they're just couplets and triplets. One is called Men and Dogs. "Why do men hit on women in bars? Why do dogs so often chase cars?" And then the other one was published in Asses of Parnassus, a site I'm partial to. It's called Millennial Romance. "After sex, each checks for texts." And that's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, I forgot to unmute everyone. Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm muting you all. Okay, now he'll hear your applause. Do it again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Okay, muting you again. Okay. Moving on to our 4th reader of the day, Jenna Lay. Jenna is the author of 2 full-length poetry collections, 6 Rivers and A History of the Cetacean American Diaspora. You can learn more about her at her website, JennaLayWriting, all one word, .com. Jenna, please take it away. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Melissa, and thanks everyone for listening. And it's Jenna Lay, just 1 E writing, or so you'll never find it. All right. Since David read a whale poem, I thought I'd start with a little whale poem too. This one was also in Asses of Parnassus. It's called The Lord's Masterwork. Once God made cetaceans, he went on vacation. The beauty of whale flippers, they never need nail clippers. All right, so I'm gonna read a couple of, what's it called? Oh, pandemic poems, sorry. I'm gonna read a couple pandemic poems. This one was in Light, and it's called Predilections. My favorite kind of mask is clear, this sort with loops around each ear. It stays in place without relying on knots at risk of self-untying, and has no pesky sideways cord to gouge a groove into one's gourd, to bunch one's hair into a hill, or slither north and south at will. My sis prefers another type. When strings weigh on her ears, she'll gripe. She's partial to a mint green hue, while I like my face masks sky blue. As for my mom, she scratched her head to see masks candy striped in red, believing cool-toned masks would be endowed with more solemnity. A guy I met once at the gym opines the thing that bothers him is masks' faint antiseptic scent. That's how good that's how good health smells, I dissent. And to think some people didn't know their tastes in masks just weeks ago. So this next one is brand new, and it's about this new drug that's recently been in the headlines, remdesivir. The poem is called A New Hope. Remdesivir, in hours the word, so lumpish and so long, is rolling liquidly off everybody's tongue. A sci-fi character who wields a starlight-powered spear might have a name like this, Sir Remdesivir. His green-skinned girlfriends call him Des for short, Des for desire. They're all a swoon. Some swear he'll save the world entire. So this is a poem that was in Light a little while back, and it's called A Very Asian Variation. And it's about my ongoing struggles with dishwashing. I used to think that part of being Asian was not owning a dishwasher. Dad standing at the sink, his scouring pad bringing the fight to contamination, more tough and thorough at elimination of grit and grease than any man or lad born on US soil that I've had the chance to test. Upon my relocation to an apartment in whose kitchen stood one of those mythic suds machines, I worried I'd somehow lost some of my Asian blood. That night, I watched my worry dissipate when, as I loaded the machine, my curried chopsticks kept falling through the bottom grate. All right, so I will read another one that was recently, I'll read this one. This is a sonnet that was in the Potomac Review a little while back, then later on E-verse. It's called A Failed Georgic. It's about people giving you writing prompts that you don't want to do. A fellow poet challenges my ass to write a Georgic, verse lines that grandstand by telling readers how to use the land. I've never owned land, not one gob of grass. Monthly, I make a stinky stack of cash and fork it over to some fakely smiling man so that the cops won't clap me in the can for squatting on a scuffed linoleum patch that sits on concrete stilts above another patch just like it. I guess it might be neat to own just 1 square foot of dirt, Earth's surface to core, that's 20 million cubic feet. In Virgil's Rome, a landless man, poor duffer, he was worth no more than his sister or his mother. All right, I'll just end with this one that was recently in Light, and it's called Deep Fake Hot Take. Watching Much Ado About Nothing now, in modern times pervaded by fake news, the pair of men deceived by Don John's ruse appear to me less like the mean, dumb cows that I took them for. It used to pain me how Pedro, who at the play's start is his crew's sage, seasoned leader, smart enough to choose Beatrice to offer marriage to, her scowl and sharp tongue notwithstanding. He goes half-cracked midway through Act 3, mixing Hero up with Margaret based on circumstantial facts, and thinks to ask no further questions. And Claudio seemed even worse, an undeserving pup. But who'd blame them now amid forged pics and audio? Thanks a lot.
Melissa, you're muted.
Melissa, you're muted.
You're muted. You muted only yourself instead of everybody else.
Sorry. Okay, yes, I was muted. So applause for me. Thank you so much. Yeah, clearly I need a tutorial on this just as much as anyone. Okay, now I'm going to remute everyone, except hopefully me. I may have to unmute myself. Oh, this is too much. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. All right. Alfred Nicol is our next reader. Alfred's third full-length book of poetry, Animal Psalms, was published in 2016 by Able Muse Press. Brief Accident of Light, a collection of poems on Newburyport, Massachusetts, that he co-wrote with Rena P. Espaya, came out last year from Kelsey Books. Recently, Alfred has given up writing verse to try his hand at boogie woogie piano. But he says, fear not, friends and neighbors, this too shall pass. Turns out you need to use both hands. Alfred, please take it away. Thank you.
Did it. Hello there, captive audience. I intend my reading this afternoon to be a public service. I've chosen poems that may be helpful in the predicament we're in. And as there are probably a lot of poets in the audience, I've made sure to include poetry that speaks to your situation in particular. For instance, you may be having trouble finding inspiration. No problem. Even while social distancing, you can embrace the inability to write. Writer's block party. I've not a thing to say. Hooray, hooray, hooray! If inspiration's tied to pain, to mourn its lack would be insane. I'll celebrate with this refrain. Hooray, hooray, hooray! My mind's a total blank. I've happiness to thank. My love is lying close to me. My son's where he's supposed to be. So ring around the rosary and take it to the bank. I'm getting writer's block, a handicap to mock. Unless I feed her some complaint, my woozy muse is apt to faint and leave me quiet as a saint, expressive as a rock. I'd better keep my peace the full term of its lease. The pendulum comes back this way. That monkey mischief rides its sway, and I'll soon have enough to say, beseeching him to cease. Sheltering at home can be difficult whether you're a poet or not, or if you only live with a poet. Actually, that might be especially difficult. Here's a poem called A Bother. Here's Rocco now, sprawling across the keys. Whatever I may try to write, he's there in black and white, purring, rolling on his back to bite my fingers if he disagrees, minding my Q's and P's. Well, I require constant stroking too. Maybe I get in the way. I like for you to say I'm clever, good, and feed me twice a day. There's nothing I would rather do than rub up next to you and feel that spark of electricity leap at the touch, connecting you to me. And finally, everyone's having bad hair days these days. But it could be worse. You could have a bad head day. A bad head day is like a bad hair day, but it goes deeper. This poem, titled Bad Head Day, has an epigraph from the French essayist Michel de Montaigne. We shall never heap enough insults on the unruliness of our mind. I took that as a challenge. Every line of this poem heaps at least one insult on my own unruly mind. More like a homing pigeon than an eagle, off on anyone's errand, flying low, mere hummingbird. One sip and there you go to taste another colored bit of treacle. Hoarder of tickets, clippings and receipts, peddler of small favors, trinketeer, loser at chutes and ladders played for keeps, darting on an impulse or in fear, flip-flopper, window shopper, old unreliable, pliable, driveling swivel neck, train wreck, besotted pothead at the salad bar, mistaking the couscous for caviar, poetaster spitting up inanities while making perfect mermaids out of manatees. An awful lot of nothing in the aggregate. Paralegal for the devil's advocate. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alfred. Another terrific reading. Oh, our next reader, you're still here, right, Tim?
I am indeed.
Yay! Our next reader is the inimitable Timothy Steele, who was also supposed to be with us reading last week, but we had technical glitches, so he's back. Timothy Steele is the author of several collections of verse, including Sapphics Against Anger and Other Poems, and Toward the Winter Solstice. He has also published 2 books about literary history, Missing Measures and All the Funds in How You Say a Thing. He's edited the poems of J.D. Cunningham. I forgot to mute everyone. I'm doing that now. So Tim, you'll have to unmute yourself again. I'm sorry. I hope that's not a problem. And I look forward to hearing you read now.
Okay, great. I'd like to thank Melissa for arranging this series and for inviting me to participate in it. As she mentioned, not once, but twice. I was in the lineup for the reading last week, but while waiting on deck, my Wi-Fi went out, and I'm grateful for this second chance to step up to the plate and appear with fellow poets on behalf of Light Magazine. This afternoon, I'll read 4 epigrams and 1 lyric poem. As most members of this Zoom meeting know, epigrams are short poems that aim at bringing a smile to the reader's face. This first one concerns an experience I had shortly after moving to Los Angeles. I purchased a ticket to hear Beethoven's Choral Symphony at the Hollywood Bowl. When I arrived at the Bowl the night of the performance, I discovered it was roughly the size of Yellowstone Park, and my seat was way toward the back, and the listening experience was hardly optimum. And the following day, I wrote this. Beethoven's Ninth at the Hollywood Bowl. The chorus sings, musicians play, but on a stage so far away, it is as if we strain to hear the 1824 premiere. Many of us feel that time speeds up, thank you, time speeds up as we age. This next epigram imagines that stars have this experience too, and they discuss it with one another. And a star speaks the epigram. I should gloss a word that the star uses. It's megacentury, which is 100 million years. One binary star talking to another. When we are young, a megacentury appears quite long. Not so when we burn down to ash. Indeed, these past 4 billion years have gone by in a flash. And this next epigram speculates about signs that will tell us when the end of days is drawing nigh. And I thought I would read it today because COVID-19 has us all thinking apocalyptic thoughts. Millennial visions. Mankind goes bonkers, but a day will dawn when we'll lay down our weapons and our cars. People will live in peace in condos on a terraformed and habitable Mars. And arts foundations will distribute grants to talented and worthy applicants. And the more conventional poem I'll read concerns an encounter I observed between a raven and a neighbor's Labrador retriever. For poetry lovers, ravens almost inevitably recall Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem, and this was the case with this raven. Brief encounter. Each time the lab barks up the tree, the raven squawks back at the dog, showing his gift for mimicry and interspecies dialogue. As louder barks and squawks extend their meeting, the lab's fervor grows. She bounds about. She's man's best friend and clearly hopes to bond with Poe's. Yet he looks down his bill at her. Her voice, unvaried, starts to grate. His ideal interlocutor would give him more to imitate, would prompt him to trot out his store of croaks and clucks, would not be vexed by his responding, nevermore, to her, when will I see you next? The bird flaps off, the dog barks on a little while for barking's sake, but the enthusiasm's gone that fired their short-lived give and take. And lastly, I'll read an epigram that appeared in Light. Its title is the date of Donald J. Trump's inauguration as president, January 20, 2017. When we were school kids and our teachers said that our democracy was so designed that anybody could be president, this probably wasn't what they had in mind. Thank you very much.
That was good.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. Okay, muting you all again. Hopefully not myself. Okay. These have been terrific readings. I can't believe we're already up to our last and much anticipated reading. This one from Marilyn L. Taylor. Marilyn L. Taylor, PhD, is a former poet laureate of the state of Wisconsin and the city of Milwaukee, where she taught poetry for 15 years in the Honors College at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. The author of 6 poetry collections, Taylor's work has also appeared in Poetry, Able Muse, Measure, Light, Raintown Review, and Rhino, among many other well-known journals and anthologies. She was awarded the 2016 Margaret Reed Poetry Prize for Verse in Forms, and has been a finalist for the X.J. Kennedy Parody Contest, the Howard Nemeroff Sonnet Award, and the Lascaux Review Prize. She now serves as an associate editor for 2 poetry journals, Verse Virtual and Third Wednesday, and continues to write, teach, and hobnob with the many extraordinary poets who also call Wisconsin home. Marilyn, looking forward to your reading. And you have to unmute yourself. Just go to your lower left corner.
There, am I with you? Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for including me in this group, Melissa. It has just been a joy so far. I was wondering if you thought about getting a laugh track. I think, some of us, when we read something that is allegedly funny, to hear the silence is a little bit, it takes some getting used to. But I don't know how you go about getting a laugh track, so that's just a joke. And my first poem really is in response to Timothy Steele, who is a magnificent prosodist, as you all know, and knows poetry inside and out. But he and I have always had a little disagreement. I think you've heard this before, Tim, where he doesn't think there's really any such thing as a spondee, but I happen to know that there is. And I have, excuse me, written this poem on that topic. It's called Sonnet in Defense of the Much Maligned Spondee. No such foot exists in English, some say. Tell them otherwise, they'll whistle, no way. Even if you're heading north to Green Bay, driving through a freezing blizzard all day, stuffed inside a green and yellow down coat, fighting off a virus plus a sore throat. They will still be adamant, but don't gloat, don't insist their hocus pocus won't float. Even though they know they may be all wet, don't expect that they'll admit it, not yet. Just relax and it'll happen, no sweat. Could it take another decade? You bet. They will say, how silly of me, ho, ho. Will they add they're very sorry? Hell no. And actually I have Anna, thank you, Anna Evans to thank for this. Well, not to thank, I just think our muses were visiting both of us at the same time, because I have a little four-liner here that comes from actually a headline. I sort of screwed around with it a little bit. It wasn't just like this, but it goes, March postponed till August. Demonstration dead. Oh wait, this is the wrong one. Just forget that. Edit it out. March postponed till August. July is due next fall. June arrives in April, and May won't come at all. One of the things you can do, because the grocery stores are still open during this very sad and dark season, is eat. And I have a sonnet that is entitled A Highly Caloric Lament. A pox upon you, Charlie chili dogs, TGI Fridays, Cold Stone Creamery, you harpies of the dreaded calorie. Quit hitting on me till my judgment fogs and every vein and capillary clogs with drippings from your latest recipe. Arugula, not for the likes of me, and neither are those dreadful diet blogs. Been there, done that, gave all my sweets away, ate naked salad, kept the flab at bay. But nowadays my magnitude increases. I'm getting tubby, fatter by the day. Just look at me, mine aft has gang agley. My life's in shreds, my mind's in Reese's Pieces. I see you, Claudia. All right, just a couple more here. The wonderful poem by Gwendolyn Brooks called We Real Cool, the Pool Players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We all know it backwards and forwards. I'll just read it really quickly. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. Well, I took the inexcusable liberty of writing a sort of a parody of that called We Real Old. The Breakfast Eaters, 7 at the Golden Waffle. We real old, we catch cold, we take pills, we change wills, we can't hear, we crave beer, we eat prune, we die soon. Maybe that's lost some of its humor considering the season. Yeah, one more poem, and it's not a sonnet or anything like that. It's free verse, and it's called "The Day After I Die." Again, a little on the dark side, but not that dark. The day after I die, they will find the cure for whatever got me, and a unified theory of physics will be announced by a consortium from MIT. Following the funeral, Earth will be contacted by intelligent beings from the Farquhar galaxy, immediately after which Tesla will announce a car that can run forever on table scraps. Excuse me. Within the week, Abbott Labs will introduce an age-reversing cream on the very heels of a morning after diet pill that tastes exactly like a Cadbury's Easter egg. Finally, the woman they hire to clean and fumigate my house will come across a sheaf of my old poems tucked optimistically inside a catalog from Forever 21 and turn them over to her Thursday client, Billy Collins, who, ignoring an infinitesimal twinge of envy, will gallantly take charge and see to everything, including, of course, any immortality. Thank you all so much. Good, Marilyn. And again, thank you, Melissa. This was a blast.
Marilyn, thank you so much. I muted everyone just for a moment, although if people want to say hi after we stop the recording, that is extremely encouraged. I think maybe the recording, no, it's still going. What a wonderful, wonderful bunch of readings. I just thank you all so much. This has been a huge treat for me. I want to make sure that all you readers have noticed the chat, the comments that have been coming in by chat. You have fans who are saying thank you and they love you and all these things, sometimes mentioning specific poems. So I want to make sure you peek at that. I'm going to remind people who arrived later one more time about next week's lineup and our time. We're starting 1 hour earlier next week, Mother's Day. Again, best present for all you moms and your moms, you know, an afternoon of laughter. So we're going to start at 2 p.m. Eastern next Sunday, May 10th. And our lineup will be A.E. Stallings, Jan Schreiber, Aurel Protopopescu, Amit Majmudar, Barbara Leidecker Crane, and me, Melissa Belmain. I hope to see you all back there. Recording specialist, you can stop recording now, and I'm going to open it. I'm going to unmute people.